Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you 3 mini reviews from Junji Ito. So as a lot of you, I think, know, Junji Ito is a very, very famous horror manga author, and is someone who I had wanted to read for a very long time, and as you may have seen in my most recent London book haul video, I ended up picking up 3 of his books in like a 3-for-2 sale, and I powered through them all. And because I am a newbie to his work, and I still consider myself a newbie to horror, although I've been reading it for a couple of years now, I wanted to kind of like power rank these 3 books and let you guys know what I thought. So just as a general sort of note, I ended up really enjoying the majority of the stuff that I read from him, so much so that I bought 1 more volume and I have 2 more from the library. So if you guys enjoy this video, I can do the same thing for these guys in part 2. So these are kind of unintentionally 3 very different kinds of books. So one is just kind of a straightforward sort of story, another is a collection of short stories, and another is a collection of short stories but all kind of wrapped together around one particular character. So basically I'm going to power rank these from my least favorite to my favorite and let you guys know what I thought. So unfortunately, the very first one that I read, I really didn't enjoy, and judging from some of the Goodreads reviews that I went through and I read after picking up this book, because I read it and I was really surprised by how much I disliked it, I looked at some of the reviews that other people have written and it looks like this isn't a particularly beloved book. So this is Remina. Remina is a very rare sci-fi horror story from him. Usually he kind of just does straight up horror weirdness, but this is very much a science fiction horror novel. So this book revolves around the discovery of a new planet. It's very exciting. The scientist who did discover it ends up naming the planet after his daughter, Remina. So we have 2 Reminas in this story. I don't know if that's going to get confusing or not, but basically this is a very exciting thing. She becomes kind of like a big celeb herself, even though she's kind of reluctant about it, and everything is great. Until they begin to realize that this planet is actually traveling towards Earth at an incredible speed, and it is devouring everything in its path. So mass hysteria begins to sort of like erupt around the world, and Remina and her father become sort of the focus of this hysteria. It's funny because for me there was a lot to actually love about this book. I love the concept of sort of sci-fi horror in general. It's something that I really enjoy, even though I've not read a lot of it, so please send your recommendations my way. But I loved kind of this, the horror being, you know, this horrific planet that's literally got like a creepy tongue that's devouring everything around it, but also the horror of what humans can do to each other. That is always a really big theme that I always really enjoy in horror books. I love sort of like when there's monsters, but the real monsters are us. That's just the best thing ever for me. So I was really surprised by how much I didn't like this, and I think the main reason, which seems to be the main reason for a lot of people, is Remina herself, the girl. Remina's basically useless. She's a useless character in a book that literally has her name as the title. She is the most useless character ever. And if you've been around this channel for a while, you may be aware of the fact that I love really strong female characters. They don't need to be badass, they don't need to be like stabbing people with swords and breaking down doors and doing all that badass girl stuff. They just have to be strong characters in their own right. And Remina is the most useless person. She cries through this entire book. She's led around. She has no agency. She like cries and calls for her dad. And that's it. Just all of these people in her life are just kind of herding her around, and it just like, it kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So I'm really glad that I actually bought other books of his, because if I had just read this one and hadn't spent so much money on these lovely hardcover editions, I probably wouldn't be picking up any more of his stuff. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I loved kind of the concept. As I said, I liked a lot of the horror elements, but like, dear God, woman, do something. So next up I read Smashed, and this is a collection of 13 short stories. And I have discovered, primarily because of this book, that with his stuff, something that I have to do is read it, consume it, and then sit and think about it for like a week before I can really make a judgment. Because his stuff is very like, there's lots of body horror, it's absolutely horror, straight up horror stuff, but it's it's almost haunting. It's one of those things that really sticks with you after you put the book down. And I find myself coming back to this a lot. So I actually gave this 3 out of 5 stars when I initially read it, but giving it like a couple of weeks, I'm actually bumping it up to 4 out of 5 because a lot of these are just like burned into my brain and I think about them constantly. So as I said, there are 13 short stories in this book. I really enjoyed the majority of them. There's one that has some kind of like animal abuse and cruelty, and since it's manga, it's drawn, that was a little bit difficult to deal with. But if you want to know what story that is, if you want to skip it, just ask me and I'll DM you. So I think my favorite story in this is called Roar, which is basically about these 2 young men who are hikers. They are up in the mountains and all of a sudden basically this phantom flood comes rushing through. They think it's this actual like flash flood that's happening. They see these people getting swept away, but they realize that maybe there's a little bit more to this than they thought. I also really like the story called Death Row Doorbell, which is basically about 2 surviving members of a family who are being haunted by the man who killed their family members, even though this man is still alive. And what else? Another one that I really liked is called I Don't Want to Be a Ghost, which, like, fair enough, I get you, but that was a really good one. So as I said, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars after having a little bit of time to absorb it. And last but not least, I was told by the gentleman at Forbidden Planet that this is actually their bestseller for his stuff. It turns out that this isn't his most well-known work. That is something that I'm actually reading right now, maybe for part 2. But this is the one that he says they sell the most copies of, so I decided to give it a try, and I really loved it. This is Tomie. So Tomie is about a girl. She's incredibly beautiful, she's young, and she has this incredible power over men, and they instantly fall in love with her, and her love kind of drives them to murder, but to specifically murder her. And she keeps coming back again and again and again, and it's very clear that she's not human, she is something else. And this is basically a collection of stories about Tomie and about the people who her sort of presence impacts, whether it is the men that she seduces or sort of their family members or friends or whatever. And this was really fun. And I was a little bit worried about reading a book specifically about like a hot female character after reading Remina, which also is a hot female character, and I didn't like this one, but like this was so good, and everything that I wanted from like, I mean, literally, I wanted anything from Remina, but she had so much more going for her, and I thought this was really great. So the one thing that I will say about this is, I mean, it's a huge volume, and it features lots and lots of stories. It is quite repetitive, so you have to really kind of like what's going on here in order to enjoy this. I think that if you thought that sort of like the main idea of like this girl and the murders and the seduction and all of that was really boring, you're not gonna like this because it's the same thing over and over and over again because it's a collection. But if you do enjoy that, I just really liked the different ways in which she just fucks with these people's lives. It was really great. There's some really good like body horror stuff in here. Some of it's really graphic, some of it less so, but I just like everything that happens around this girl and how she ends up coming back again and again, and all of that I thought was just so good. I really love this, but I would recommend maybe breaking it up over a period of time instead of reading it all through like I did, because even though I liked it, it is very repetitive. So I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought this was amazing. So there you have it. Those are 3 Junji Ito books that I have read. As I said, I've got a whole nother stack sitting next to me right now, and I'm planning on reading these very soon. And as we transition from summer into the spooky season, so if you guys would like to hear more of my thoughts on this author's books, definitely let me know. I would love to know in the comments below if you have read any of his books, if you have any that you would like to recommend that maybe I pick up next, or if you have any other sort of horror books to shout out, especially horror manga, because this isn't something that I tend to read a lot of and I'm really enjoying it. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.